You crouch down, dig your fingers into the ground, and it's like pushing into dry cement. Cracked on top, gray underneath, dead. You planted in this same spot last spring. You watered it, you fertilized it, you did everything the bag told you to do. And what you got back was stunted plants, yellowing leaves, and a harvest that didn't come close to justifying the work. Sound familiar? That's not a weather problem. That's not a pest problem. That is a soil problem. And here's the part nobody at the garden center will ever tell you. Another bag of fertilizer will not fix it. It will make it worse. Slowly, invisibly, season after season, worse. I know because I did it for years. My name is not important. What I'm going to show you today is 12 soil amendments, things you can add, layer, or work into that dead ground right now that will change what it's capable of growing this season. Not next year, not after some slow 3-year rebuild, this season. These don't come from a product line. They come from the Amish and Old Order Mennonite farming communities in Wayne County, Ohio, who have been turning heavy clay and worked out ground into productive soil for over 150 years. Without a single bag of synthetic fertilizer, without a single trip to a garden center. I pulled 47 pounds of carrots last spring from a patch of ground a soil lab had declared, and I'm quoting the report directly, severely degraded and unsuitable for vegetable production. One season, same ground. Stick with me to the end because I'm going to share something a Mennonite farmer named Raymond told me almost as an aside, a technique he called the fastest way to wake up ground so dead it won't even grow weeds. I've never seen it in any book, any guide, or any video. It's coming at the end. Don't skip ahead. Before we get into it, if you're new here, hit subscribe right now. Every week on this channel, I cover the methods, the old knowledge, and the techniques that the gardening industry has no financial interest in ever telling you about. Next week, I'm going deep into the companion planting systems these same Amish communities use to eliminate pest pressure without a single spray. You do not want to miss that one. Subscribe, and let's get into this. Before we get to the 12 amendments, I want to tell you something that Raymond told me, because it reframes the entire conversation. He said most people treat their garden soil like a storage medium, like a bucket. You put nutrients in, the plant takes nutrients out. When the bucket runs low, you refill it. That's the industrial model. That's what the bag companies sell. But soil isn't a bucket, it's a community. Healthy ground contains somewhere between 100 million and 1 billion living organisms in a single teaspoon. Bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes. Earthworms are just the ones you can see. The ones you can't see are doing most of the work. They're breaking down organic matter into plant-available nutrients. They're building the pore structure that lets roots breathe and water drain. They're forming the fungal networks, mycorrhiza, that extend a plant's root system tenfold. When that community collapses, your soil becomes the powdery, compacted, dried-out mess that most of us have inherited or created. The conventional approach tries to bypass that community entirely. Synthetic fertilizers feed the plant directly. Problem is, they also acidify the soil, disrupt microbial activity, and leave the community weaker every season. You don't fix the ground. You keep the plant on life support while the ground dies underneath it. The Amish approach does the opposite. Every single thing Raymond showed me was designed to feed the community first and trust the community to feed the plant. That's the entire philosophy. Feed the soil, not the plant. Everything that follows is an application of that one principle. Here's the science behind why this works, and I'll keep it simple. Plant roots don't just absorb water and nutrients on their own. They release sugars, called root exudates, into the surrounding soil. Those sugars feed bacteria and fungi. In exchange, the bacteria and fungi solubilize minerals, produce growth hormones, and physically extend the root's reach through hyphal threads. It's a transaction. It's been happening for 450 million years. When you apply synthetic fertilizers, you short-circuit that transaction. The plant gets fed directly, stops producing root exudates, and the microbial community starves. Apply enough synthetic fertilizer over enough seasons, and you end up with what's called a dead zone, ground with almost no biological activity. The nutrients are there on paper. Nothing in the soil can access them. This is called nutrient lockout, and it is why people add more and more fertilizer every year for less and less return. They're not running out of minerals. They're running out of the organisms that make minerals available. Every amendment I'm going to show you works by restoring biological activity. Some add organic matter. Some adjust pH. Some introduce specific organisms directly. Some do all three. But the mechanism is always the same. Rebuild the community, and the community feeds your plants. That's the science. Now let's build something. Amendment number 1. Aged hardwood compost, the slow foundation. Not fresh compost, not hot compost. Aged compost, at least 12 months old, dark brown, no visible food scraps, smelling of forest floor, not barnyard. I'm specific about this because fresh compost can introduce nitrogen that burns roots, and partially decomposed material ties up soil nitrogen during breakdown. Aged compost does neither. It adds humus directly. Work 3 to 4 inches into the top 8 inches of soil before planting. For clay soil, expect water retention to improve within 6 weeks. For sandy soil, you'll see nutrient holding capacity increase almost immediately. What to avoid? Bagged compost that lists biosolids as an ingredient. That is treated sewage sludge. Raymond called it a shortcut that costs you your soil. The Mennonite farms in Wayne County have composted kitchen and field waste for 4 generations. That practice offers what it's offered for 150 years. Amendment number 2. Biochar, the ancient carbon cage. Biochar is charcoal made specifically for soil application. And I want to explain why this isn't just add charcoal from your grill, because that mistake ruins soil. True biochar is made from wood heated in a low oxygen environment, a process called pyrolysis. The result is a porous carbon structure that acts like a high-rise apartment building for microbes. Billions of organisms can colonize a single gram of biochar. It also binds to nutrients and holds them in the root zone instead of letting them leach away. Apply at 5 to 10% by volume of your soil, roughly a ½ inch layer tilled in. Always inoculate it first. Soak it in compost tea or liquid fish fertilizer for 48 hours before applying. Uninoculated biochar will actually draw nutrients out of your soil for the first season. What to avoid? Charcoal briquettes. They contain binding agents and accelerants that are toxic to soil organisms. Indigenous communities across the Amazon basin built what archaeologists call terra preta, dark earth, using this exact method over 2,500 years ago. Soil scientists at Cornell University found that terra preta sites still show dramatically elevated microbial activity today. That's what biochar offers when it's done right. Amendment number 3. Wood chip mulch, the living layer. Not bark mulch, not colored wood chips. Arborist wood chips. Fresh, mixed material from a tree trimming service, including leaves and small branches. Here's what most people miss. When arborist chips break down, they feed a specific category of fungi called saprophytic fungi. Those fungi are the first colonizers of dead organic matter. They break down lignin and cellulose into forms that bacteria can then process further down the chain. They're the starter culture for your soil community. Apply 4 to 6 inches deep on the soil surface. Do not till it in. The biology happens at the interface, where chip meets soil. Tilling it in buries the aerobic organisms that need surface oxygen. What to avoid? Applying fresh chips directly around the base of vegetables. They can create a brief nitrogen drawdown as they begin decomposing. Keep a 4-inch gap around stems. Amish farms in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania use wood chip walkways between beds and incorporate the aged material back into beds every 2 to 3 years. That practice offers what it's offered for generations. Amendment number 4. Worm castings, the biological catalyst. This is the most expensive amendment on this list per pound, and it is worth every cent. Worm castings are not just fertilizer. They are a concentrated inoculant of beneficial microorganisms, plant growth hormones, specifically cytokinins and auxins, and enzymes that increase nutrient availability. A 2014 study out of Ohio State found that even a 10% castings blend increased germination rates by 23% compared to control soil. You don't need much. Mix castings at 10 to 20% by volume into your seed starting mix or transplant holes. For in-ground applications, top dress a half-inch layer and water in. What to avoid? Worm castings that list fillers or buffering agents on the label. Pure castings should be 100% worm output. If it pours easily from the bag like potting mix, it's been diluted. Castings offer what vermicompost has offered since the first earthworm turned the first gram of soil. Amendment number 5. Raw kelp meal, the mineral bridge. Mined mineral fertilizers are essentially finite. Kelp is not. Kelp meal is dried and ground seaweed, specifically species like Ascophyllum nodosum, harvested from cold Atlantic waters off the coast of Maine and Nova Scotia. It contains over 60 trace minerals, including boron, molybdenum, cobalt, and manganese, elements that synthetic NPK fertilizers completely ignore, and that are required for enzyme function in both plants and soil organisms. Apply at 1 pound per 100 square feet once or twice per season. It breaks down slowly, releasing minerals across 8 to 12 weeks. What to avoid? Liquid kelp extract sold as a substitute. The extract carries growth hormones from the kelp, but loses most of the mineral content in processing. Use the meal for soil. Use liquid for foliar feeding. They serve different purposes. Coastal New England farmers have been applying kelp to agricultural soil since the 1700s. That practice offers what it's offered for 3 centuries. Amendment number 6. Mycorrhizal inoculant, the root network. This one I want to spend an extra moment on, because the conventional gardening world has almost entirely ignored it. Mycorrhizal fungi form a symbiotic relationship with plant roots. The fungi penetrate the root cells, not harmfully, symbiotically, and extend fungal threads called hyphae into the surrounding soil. Those threads can reach 8 inches beyond the root tip. They access water and phosphorus the root itself cannot reach. A plant with a healthy mycorrhizal network is effectively 10 to 12 times larger underground than what you see above the soil. That's not a metaphor. That's physical reach. Apply the inoculant directly to roots at transplant time, or mix it into the planting hole. Use an endomycorrhizal product for vegetables and annuals. Use ectomycorrhizal for trees and shrubs. What to avoid? High phosphorus fertilizers applied at the same time. High phosphorus in soil suppresses mycorrhizal colonization because the plant stops paying for the network when phosphorus is freely available. Apply inoculant, then wait 3 weeks before any phosphorus additions. Amendment number 7. Aged manure, the nitrogen anchor. Raw, fresh manure burns. Aged manure, minimum 6 months, ideally 12, feeds. The aging process converts volatile ammonia nitrogen into stable organic nitrogen that releases slowly across a growing season. It also reduces pathogen load to safe levels and reduces weed seed viability significantly. Chicken, rabbit, or horse manure aged for 12 months is what I use. Work 2 to 3 inches into the top 6 inches of soil in fall, or as a spring amendment 4 weeks before planting. What to avoid? Steer manure from commercial feedlots. It frequently carries persistent herbicide residue from hay the cattle ate. That herbicide, aminopyralid, survives composting, survives the cow's digestive system, and can sterilize your soil for 2 to 3 seasons. I learned this the hard way. Old order Mennonite farms in Holmes County have used animal manure as their primary fertility source for over a century. That practice offers what it's offered for 6 generations. Amendment number 8, gypsum, the clay breaker. If you have clay soil, this is the amendment that changes the physical structure fastest. Gypsum is calcium sulfate. When applied to clay, calcium ions displace sodium ions from the clay particles. This causes the clay to flocculate, to form clumps, rather than sealing together into an impermeable layer. The result is improved drainage, reduced compaction, and dramatically better root penetration. Apply at 20 to 40 pounds per 1,000 square feet. Water in thoroughly. You will not see results overnight. You will see them in 6 to 8 weeks. A soil that was puddling and crusting will begin to crumble. What to avoid? Lime as a substitute. Lime raises pH as a side effect. Gypsum is pH neutral. If your soil is already alkaline, lime will make it worse. Get a soil test first. A basic one costs under $20 at most county extension offices. Amendment number 9, cover crop seed mix, the living amendment. Every amendment on this list is something you add. This one is something you grow. A cover crop mixture of hairy vetch, winter rye, and crimson clover planted in late summer or early fall does 4 things simultaneously. The rye suppresses weeds and adds carbon when terminated. The vetch and clover fix atmospheric nitrogen, literally pulling it from the air and depositing it in root nodules in the soil. The root mass breaks up compaction at depth, and when you terminate the crop in spring by cutting and leaving it on the surface, you add a slow-release mulch layer over the entire bed. Cost per 1,000 square feet of seed, between $8 and $14. Cost of equivalent synthetic nitrogen application, $30 to $60 per season, every season. What to avoid? Terminating with herbicide. Herbicide kills the biological activity you just spent a season building. Terminate by crimping, cutting, or mowing. Colonial American farmers grew cover crops as a standard practice throughout the 18th and 19th centuries. That practice offers what it's offered for 300 years. We stopped. We can start again. Amendment number 10, humic acid concentrate, the molecular glue. This one comes from something ancient, literally. Humic acid is extracted from leonardite, a form of oxidized lignite coal that formed from decomposed plant matter millions of years ago. It's concentrated ancient soil organic matter, and it does something no other amendment does. It increases the cation exchange capacity of your soil. Cation exchange capacity, or CEC, is the soil's ability to hold positively charged mineral ions like calcium, magnesium, and potassium, and release them to plant roots on demand. Low CEC means nutrients leach away with every rain. High CEC means the soil holds them like a sponge. Apply liquid humic acid at 2 to 4 ounces per gallon, drenched into the soil monthly through the growing season. Within 1 season, You will measurably improve CEC on even severely depleted ground. What to avoid? Humate products that are primarily fulvic acid. Fulvic acid is better for foliar application. Humic acid is the soil amendment. Read the label carefully. Amendment number 11. Fermented plant juice, the living tonic. This one Raymond showed me on his back porch, and I want to describe what I saw. He had 2 5-gallon buckets with lids sitting in the shade of his barn. Inside were bundles of what looked like wilted grass clippings and comfrey leaves, weighted down by a river stone, submerged in a dark brown liquid. It smelled strongly of fermentation. Not rot, not decay, but the sharp, alive smell of bread rising or cider working. He called it his field tonic. What soil scientists call a fermented plant extract, a liquid amendment made by packing fresh plant material with brown sugar or molasses and allowing it to ferment for 7 to 14 days. The fermentation produces lactic acid bacteria, wild yeasts, and a broad spectrum of enzymes that, when diluted and applied to soil, introduce beneficial microbial diversity directly. Use 1 part fermented plant juice to 500 parts water as a soil drench every 2 to 3 weeks. Best plant material: comfrey, nettle, horsetail, and any aromatic herb. What to avoid? Using only 1 plant species. Diversity of input creates diversity of microbial output. Mix at least 3 to 4 plant species per batch. This practice is documented in Korean natural farming traditions going back centuries. It offers what it's offered for generations before anyone called it biostimulant research. Amendment number 12. Finished leaf mold, the fungal feast. Last on the list. First in simplicity. Leaf mold is nothing more than autumn leaves, piled up, dampened, and left alone for 12 to 24 months. The result is a dark, crumbly, earthy-smelling material that is almost entirely fungal biomass. It contains almost no nitrogen, phosphorus, or potassium. On a fertilizer label, it would look like a failure, but as a soil conditioner, it is extraordinary. Applied at 2 to 3 inches and worked into the top 6 inches of soil, it improves water retention in sandy soils and improves drainage in clay soils simultaneously. It inoculates the soil with fungal diversity, and it is available to any homeowner who has deciduous trees within walking distance, for free, every autumn, without buying a thing. What to avoid? Leaves from black walnut trees. Juglone, the compound in walnut leaves and roots, suppresses germination and root development in most vegetable species. Every farming tradition I have ever studied uses fallen leaves as a soil resource. Every one. They offer what they've offered since the first autumn in recorded history. Now, before I get to the bonus technique, and I want you to stay for this one because it's specifically for ground that won't even grow weeds, I want to pause for just a moment. If you've been watching this channel for a while, you know that what I share here is just one piece of a much larger picture. I've spent 2 years putting together a complete soil restoration system, everything from initial testing to amendment sequencing to seasonal timing, into a single printed guide. It's called the Living Soil Manual. It's not a digital download, it's a physical book, because some knowledge deserves to be held in your hands. You can find it at the link in the description below. Back to the bonus. Before I get to that final technique, I want to name some patterns I see in conventional soil improvement approaches. No judgment here. I did every single one of these myself. Pattern 1. The bag addiction. Adding synthetic fertilizer every spring and calling it soil improvement. That's feeding the plant, not the soil. The ground under a synthetically fertilized garden typically gets worse every season, even while the plants look fine. Every bag of synthetic fertilizer is a missed opportunity to build something permanent. Pattern 2. Tilling as a solution. The first instinct when soil is compacted is to till it. Tilling does temporarily break up compaction, but it also shreds fungal networks, buries surface organisms, and destroys the pore structure that biological activity built. One good tilling can set soil biology back 2 to 3 years. Every unnecessary tilling is a missed opportunity to let the ground heal. Pattern 3. pH obsession without biology. Adjusting pH is legitimate, but I've met gardeners who have their pH dialed in perfectly and their plants still struggle. Because pH without biology is just chemistry. The organisms that make nutrients available have their own tolerances. Fix the pH and inoculate the community at the same time. One without the other is a missed opportunity. Pattern 4. One amendment thinking. Adding compost alone, or kelp meal alone, or worm castings alone, and expecting transformation. Soil restoration is a system, not a single product. Every soil has multiple limiting factors. A single amendment addresses one of them. The remaining limitations are missed opportunities. I did all 4 of these for the better part of a decade. The garden looked acceptable. It was never alive. Now, the starter secret. Raymond mentioned this almost as an aside just before I left his property. I had been talking about a section of my backyard that was under compacted clay. Former driveway, 40 years of gravel, 0 organic matter. Nothing was growing there but crabgrass and bittercress. He said, "Before you do anything else, you need to wake the ground up." What he described is called an aerobic compost tea drench. Here's how to do it. Fill a 5-gallon bucket with unchlorinated water, either rainwater or tap water left out for 24 hours. Add 1 cup of finished aged compost. Add 2 tablespoons of unsulfured molasses. Drop an aquarium air pump with air stone into the bucket and run it for 24 to 36 hours. What you end up with is a highly oxygenated liquid teeming with aerobic bacteria and fungi, a living inoculant. Apply the entire 5 gallons immediately. Do not store it. The organisms are alive, and they need to get into the ground within 4 hours of stopping aeration. Apply to 100 square feet of prepared soil, water in lightly, and within 10 to 14 days, begin your amendment program. What this does is introduce a starter culture into ground that has almost no biological activity. It kickstarts the community before amendments arrive. Think of it as lighting the fire before you add the wood. I did this on that former driveway section in April. By July, I had volunteer tomatoes growing from compost I'd spread nearby. The ground wasn't dead anymore. Raymond shrugged when I told him what happened. "The ground knows how to heal," he said again. "You just stopped interrupting it." I've never seen this technique in any gardening book. I haven't seen it on any channel. This is what Raymond handed me in a conversation, not a product. Here's what ties all 12 amendments together. Every single one of them is doing the same thing. They're feeding the organisms that feed the plant. The compost adds organic matter for decomposers. The biochar gives organisms a home. The mycorrhizal inoculant establishes fungal networks. The cover crops add nitrogen through microbial fixation. Even gypsum, which seems purely physical, improves drainage so aerobic organisms can survive. 12 different amendments, one principle. Feed the community. Trust the community to feed your plants. The commercial model inverts this. It cuts out the community entirely and feeds the plant directly. It works for a season, for a few seasons, but it leaves the ground weaker every year, and you end up dependent on products, on bags, on inputs from corporations who profit when your soil cannot sustain itself. The Mennonite farms around Worcester, Ohio don't buy soil amendments from a store. They haven't for 4 generations. Their ground produces because they invested in the community underneath it, year after year, until the ground could largely take care of itself. That's what we're building here. Not a better garden this season, a ground that works for the next 20 years. If you're watching this right now, you probably have ground that could be doing more. You've put in the work, you've bought the things, and the results still feel like they should be better. They can be, not with more products, with the right foundation. The Living Soil Manual walks through everything I've covered today in full detail: amendment timing by season, sourcing guidance, soil test interpretation, and a 3-year restoration map. Everything I've learned, including what Raymond showed me, in one place. Click the link in the description to get your copy, and if you're not ready for the guide yet, hit subscribe, because the next video is going to cover what to do once your soil is alive, and that conversation changes everything. Which of these 12 amendments are you starting with? Leave it in the comments. I read every one.